Hey, it's Cher, and you're watching the Style and Stewardship podcast, or you're listening to the Style and Stewardship podcast on audio. So I cannot wait to get into this topic. I have been struggling with histamine intolerance for years, and it wasn't until a couple years ago that I found out what it actually was. So because of that, it has led me down a path, and since I'm a nutritionist, it is something that I really try to impact by the foods that I'm eating. There are things that I could not eat before that I can eat now, and I feel so much better physically, emotionally, psychologically. I feel so much better, and I really wanted to share some of the tips that helped me and some of the things that I did while I was in the thick of struggling with my histamine and where I am now with all of it. I've also answered some of your questions that have come in. Thank you for sending those in about histamine intolerance, and I can't wait to let you know what I'm doing now and share with you some of the things that might be helpful that you may not have considered about histamine intolerance. So stay tuned. I wanted to share many of the things that I've done to help my body when it comes to histamine. Years ago, I was struggling really hard with allergies and food intolerances and skin issues and so much sinus and congestion and insomnia and clearing my throat and stuffy nose and so many different things that I could not understand why I was experiencing. I would wake up 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning without fail every single morning, and sometimes my husband would have to get up and sleep on the couch. Sometimes I had to get up and sleep on the couch because I would have these sneezing attacks. And those were some of the things that I experienced, but that's definitely not all of the things that I've experienced. When it comes to histamine intolerance, it took me years to find out that that's exactly what was going on. And one of the ways that clued me into that, and one of the ways that I found out, was all of the things that I could not tolerate, all the healthy things that I was doing that were literally making me feel like I was coming down with the flu. You know, those first days where you just feel run down, you feel fatigued, your body hurts. Sometimes it hurts to even like touch your skin. You just feel inflamed, and just that's the best way that I can explain it. You feel like you're coming down with something, and that's what histamine intolerance did for me. It made me feel like I was coming down with something all the time, and some days were worse than others. I got to the point where I could not function well, I could not do much, I couldn't even think clearly unless I had something like some over-the-counter things like Allegra D I lived off of for almost a year, Claritin D, and all of these different things that I had to take even during the winter. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, nothing is blooming, it's freezing cold outside, why am I experiencing what feels like allergies? And then I would eat certain things and it would make it worse, and I was thinking, I've eaten these things my whole life, or I've eaten them, you know, throughout the course of my life, and why all of a sudden am I having issues eating this food? So food intolerances clued me in, skin issues. When I would work out, I felt like my heart was racing more than it should be. It was really hard for me to pinpoint what was causing what I was experiencing. Took me a long time to figure that out, but by the grace of God, I did. And so it was so helpful hearing someone else that went through this before I even had a name for what it was. And I was so grateful to finally have answers and to be pointed into a direction that I could go. So that is what I want to do here. I want to help you if you are experiencing some just unexplained, like just issues with your health and things that are like allergies and food allergies and look like food allergies, but yet you don't go into anaphylactic shock or something like that, having like a peanut allergy or something of that nature. But so many things also coincide with histamine intolerance, and I want to touch on some of those things too, because the thing that helped me the most when it came to this was really getting focused on my food and my nutrition and figuring out what my unique triggers were. So when you look up histamine intolerance, you're going to see something like a low histamine diet, which is very helpful. And it's actually, I believe, one of the first steps to figuring out if you even are struggling with histamine or not. Okay, so the question that came in, and this is my YouTube friend, so hey, and thank you for your questions. I wanted to start with this one, and it was, do you take supplements like DAO or the histamine supplements from Seeking Health? I take these. Did you to follow a no or low histamine diet, avoid leftovers. What helped the most? Okay, so this is one of the things that I absolutely have to do, even though I have really progressed and I've been able to eat so many things now that I couldn't a year ago, like literally couldn't go near it. And one of the things that is really, really important when it comes to meat is I like to try my best to buy meat that's in its whole state. So what I mean by that is, you know, you can buy ground chicken or you can buy a chicken breast. I will opt for the chicken breast because it has less surface area for bacteria to form. Beef, particularly because I buy the grass-fed beef and I freeze that, and I try to get those that have furthest date out as far as its expiration, so that I can make sure that it hasn't been sitting there very long before I get it. I will also opt for buying meat that's already frozen because I don't have to think about it as much as far as how long is it going to sit in the fridge before I can get to it, or how long did it sit at the store before I got to it. I also used to use a meat delivery service. I don't anymore because I just don't have the space since we've moved and I'm not able to utilize my deep freezer. But before that, I made sure to get in all of my beef. That way it was frozen before it got to me and it would stay frozen until I used it. Beef in particular is aged for 2 weeks typically before it's even processed and sold. And when we have issues with histamine, we have issues with meat that has had time for bacteria to proliferate. So that is one of the things that I make sure to freeze or to buy pre-frozen, and I try to get the absolute best quality that I can afford or that I can get at that time. So definitely freezing all of my meat, even if we've had, so what I like to do, my husband is even used to it now, I freeze almost all of our meat, including theirs. At the beginning, I did not do that. I would just prep out meat for myself for the week and I would place it in the freezer. That's one of the things that helped me so much, and one of the things that helped me the most when it came to my food. I did a low histamine diet for sure, and for a lot of things I would skip over things that would be unique triggers for me. So everyone doesn't have the same triggers when it comes to histamine intolerance, but the things that I certainly have major issues with, and one of the reasons why I found out I had histamine intolerance were all those healthy things that I was trying to do. And dairy is something I cut out years ago because I had to for my son. So I've been pretty much dairy free for 8 years, but I did try to incorporate some goat dairy. That didn't go very well. I may try again in the future, but that is a unique trigger for me, which is dairy and gluten. Gluten in particular, not just gluten, but other grains as well, really affect me. So corn is one of them. I can have it once in a blue moon. I also try to make sure that that is made traditionally. So traditionally they would use lime in the making of corn products. So that's one of the ways that I would try to have that whenever I did. And you know, if I went to a restaurant and I got fajitas, I would have them leave off the peppers, add extra onions, since onions contain quercetin, which is really great for lowering histamine and inflammation, along with vitamin C. And I would have them bring out corn tortillas. A lot of times I just wouldn't eat it. There were other things that I had unique triggers for, and that was beans. I still can't tolerate beans very well. And when it comes to low and no histamine, I find that most people, if you have any sort of gut issue, typically it really drives your histamine intolerance symptoms even more so because the body's dealing with the inflammation in the gut. So enzymes are truly helpful to me, especially in the beginning. I actually use something that contained ox bile in it. I'll link what that is, and I'll put a picture somewhere on the screen, because that really helped my body to break down things that wasn't really efficient and effective in. And I know that that's because I had a pre-existing situation going on that was making my histamine even worse. So I kind of chose to dive into that first, since I feel like that was my first domino as far as really filling my histamine bucket and making things worse, was the extra burden of the things that I already had going on in my health. So that's one of the places that I started with that. One of the things that was causing me issues that I didn't recognize at first was coffee. So I actually cut it out when I was healing my gut, and I cut it out for about 9 months. And it was something that was hard at the first, but it got a lot easier. This is not something that you necessarily have to do, but I had to do it specifically because a lot of people that are sensitive to histamine or have histamine intolerance are actually exposed to mold in lots of areas that they may not be aware of. So mold absolutely drives histamine like nobody's business. If you want to bring on histamine symptoms, get around a lot of mold, and it is a surefire way to overwhelm your system if you have issues breaking histamine down. But mold is hard for anybody, but it puts a toxic burden on your body that causes an inflammatory response that can really drive your histamine symptoms. So what I did was I switched to a mold-free coffee when I started drinking coffee again, and it is one of the things that, thank you God, I was able to work back into my life because it really helps me with my mental focus, and it's something that I like to use as a natural way to do that. So that is one of the things that I use. I'll link the one that I use below. I use, but for those that are listening on audio, I specifically drink the Bulletproof brand. I love the Mentalist for the Bulletproof brand, and I also love the High Achiever for the Bulletproof brand, and I've been using that for a little over a year now. I've shared it before, but I wanted to share it here again and why I'm drinking that. So it has to do with my histamine. The next thing you want to be careful of is if you have histamine intolerance, you also may have another issue called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And what that is that's literally your bacteria being out of balance and in the wrong place. So our small intestines isn't supposed to house bacteria, our large intestines is. It's supposed to be further down. So when these bacteria start to get into our small intestines, it can cause a lot of issues where when we are taking in things like Fodmaps, which are specific carbohydrate sugars in the fibers of foods that we're eating, these are broken down by bacteria in the gut. However, when we get bacteria in the small part of our intestines, it actually ferments those things, and that can cause a lot of gas and other issues for people who have histamine intolerance and drive those symptoms even further because they themselves create histamine. So SIBO was something that I had issues with, as well as there's another thing that typically will run kind of side to side with some other conditions, but leaky gut is one, which is intestinal permeability, which means that our gut lining is allowing things into our body's circulation that shouldn't be there. And that is a surefire way to put our immune system on notice and have it sending out these inflammatory mediators, which again will drive histamine. So all of these things, when we have a picture of that, it kind of helps us to understand, like, okay, there are a lot of things that we can do dietarily to help, because a lot of the things that we're taking in can exacerbate our histamine overload and those symptoms that we're experiencing. That is something that we have to watch out for. If we have histamine intolerance, you may also have SIBO. I'm not diagnosing anything, but these are some things to keep in your mind for testing that you may or may not want to have done, and things that you just may want to have on your radar so you can zero in on what may be causing your excess histamine or making your histamine worse. When we have a buildup of estrogen in our system, it's going to heighten our histamine response. So ladies, if you are having soy products can mimic estrogen in the body. So can things like plastics. So yeast can be another thing. If you are someone who has issues with Candida, an overgrowth of yeast, everyone has Candida, but when you get an overgrowth of it, an imbalanced growth of it, then what ends up happening is your body is very, very, very sensitive to sugar. So if you've ever baked bread, you know that the thing that you need to make yeast bread rise is sugar, some sort of sweetener for those bacteria to actually eat. And then they release carbon dioxide. They create the whole rise effect when we're cooking and baking. I took things that had DAO in them. So I sprouted some of my own broccoli sprouts. I couldn't do that for very long because I couldn't really tolerate that very well, which is interesting. And I really, tried to help my body produce DAO or not have to produce as much of it, because I really had some gut issue things going on. So I really tried to cut out things that bothered me. And uniquely, one of the things that I still cannot eat is a whole egg. I can have it if it's baked in something, because you know it's spread out through a whole pan of something or a whole pan of muffins or something like that. But I can't tolerate eating whole eggs. I can't tolerate egg whites in particular. So that is a little bonus help for some of you out there if you are struggling with some of the things that you are eating. Egg whites might be an issue for you. I find that that's one of the things that's not really listed on a lot of those low histamine diet things. So that is something that really helped me, was to make sure that my body was breaking down the food that I was taking in so that it could be used. I was having issues with SIBO and a malabsorption problem and some other things that were literally at the height of my histamine intolerance, and one of the reasons why I was clued into as to what was going on. So Seeking Health products I absolutely love. I'll share some of the ones that I take, and I'll share your other question. You said what helped me the most. Let me tell you. I have just a little container of some of this isn't all the things that I took, but some of the things that I took that really moved the needle for me. And I did mention this already, but this was the Digestion Intensive, and this is by Seeking Health. I use a lot of their products. This is one of the ones that I really used and noticed a huge difference with how much energy I had. And when we think of histamine, we have to think holistically, because we want to support the entire body and the systemic inflammation that it may be having, but also the other things that the body will have to work on. And if if the body's trying to put out two fires at once, it's dispersing that energy as opposed to just taking out one total fire, we can cause just excess issues in the body. I hope that makes sense. So instead of having everything and all of our soldiers go to one spot, we have them spread out instead of having that combined force on this one area. So I figured, let me help the foundation of my body, the foundation of my digestion, and the other gut issues that I had going on. So that is why I took the digestive enzyme. I always like to give context as to why I'm doing what I'm doing, so that it can help you when you're trying to figure out how to approach this. If you want to work with someone, I would love to work with you on it. I'll leave details in the description of how to work on just your health and your wellness, and help you figure out what's going on in your body so you can feel well. You can check out that link, no obligation, but I just wanted to let you know that it is there and I am here to help. NAC, this right here. So the body has a master antioxidant called glutathione. NAC is N-acetyl L-cysteine. I've shared this in my supplements video. I take this every single day. This is something that helps our body because it helps it at a foundational level. So that is one of the things that I take. I make sure to take that every single day. I notice when I haven't had it, and that's one of the things with supplements. You don't have to take everything forever, but it is important to help your body, especially in the time of healing, so that it can get to a place where when you are, you have other things that are coming at you, whether stress or foods or whatever other dietary or food intolerances you may have, you can lower your body's need to produce a lot of histamine, and you can just help yourself on a foundational level. So that is one of the things that I take still to this day. Omega-3s, absolutely amazing for you. This is something else that is going to help your body with inflammation. It literally helps the body to lower inflammation. This is the brand that I love, just because it's tested for things like heavy metals and things like that. I have a practitioner account. I will link that below. And I just like to use it because I know that I'm getting higher quality, and I know that these things have been third-party tested. So that's why I like to use that. And it has what it says that it has in it. The other thing that I used, this is from Seeking Health, and this is the Optimal PC, and this is the phospholipid complex. And the reason why I took this was to help my body to create choline. That's a neurotransmitter that we need, and the reason why I took that specifically was because I could not handle eggs for a very long time, and I needed to make sure that my body was getting in something that could produce choline, so that is why I took that. And that I don't have to take as much because now I can eat some eggs. I can't eat the egg white, but I can eat the egg yolk, and I can get my choline that way. Magnesium. So I take magnesium glycinate from Pure Encapsulations. I take this specifically because of exercise. So exercise is something that can also cause inflammation in the body because the body is being pushed, right? You're lifting heavy things so that your muscles can grow and you can build muscle. When we're doing that, it is a type of stress on the body. It's a good stress, but it's still a stress that causes inflammation in the body. So because of that, I like to take this because it helps with muscle repair, but it also helps with my sleep. I have gone through so many bottles of this. Stress also depletes magnesium, as well as some other things that we're taking when our electrolytes are out of balance. I try to make sure that I have that. That is why I take that. And I notice a huge difference in my sleep quality and in the soreness that I feel. You can also take this topically if you're at a place where your stomach is like jacked up and you can't take another supplement. Another great way to get magnesium in is to take it topically, and you can use a magnesium spray. Mine is in my bathroom, but I use trace elements for that. And let me see what else we have. I have to take a B complex because many people that have issues with DAO or the HMNT gene have issues with methylation, and that's literally how our body is taking in nutrients, sending them where they need to go, and metabolizing them properly. So I take an active B complex. This is the one that I take. Seeking Health also has an amazing one as well. I take these because I've had labs done to show that I'm low in B vitamins, and I also notice a huge benefit to taking these for my histamine intolerance. Probiotics. You can't just take any probiotic, right, when you are experiencing histamine intolerance symptoms and they're flaring up, because a lot of probiotic bacterial strains actually are histamine producing. Things that helped me so much was getting some good bacteria in, but in the form of Bifidolongum. So this is one that does not create excess histamine, and it is specifically Bifidobacterium longum BB536. So this is a strain that has been studied to not cause histamine to build or to be created by the bacteria themselves. That's why we have issues with things like dairy and things like yogurt and things like sourdough and all those things that are healthy for everyone else. The fermentation of those bacteria, anything fermented, really causes an issue for us. The other thing that I took was Akkermansia. These are the two that I have found that work for me. So that is what I took as far as supplements. I also took vitamin D3 and K2. If we are low in vitamin D, we will have more inflammation in our bodies. And if we're taking D3 without K2, calcium can actually be deposited where it shouldn't be, which is in soft tissues of the body. So those are the things that I have taken. This is not everything that I've taken, but I have whittled my supplements down so much. So I say all of that to let you know what I'm taking, as well as answering your question as far as what has helped the most. It is so great to get to a place where you don't need as much help, where you just need support in certain areas. So the gut is the first area that you definitely want to concentrate on, but you can't do what everybody else is doing. L-glutamine and things like can work for some people, will not work for everybody that has histamine intolerance. You can take a lot of things that are healthy for other people that will make our symptoms worse and drive histamine further and further. Things like citrus. We can't do a lot of citrus because that will cause issues for a lot of us. You may have unique, we all have unique triggers. You may be able to tolerate citrus better than I can, but I can't tolerate it. So what I take is camu powder, and this is a whole food based, it's just like a bitter powder. There's no sugar in it. It's freeze dried, and I get an organic one. There's another brand that I like, but I take this, a teaspoon of this a day, because 1 teaspoon has 478% of your daily value of vitamin C, and it has 430 milligrams. Regular vitamin C that you will find in a lot of multivitamins will not work for you, and will actually, they may make things worse for you because they are derived from corn. A lot of times it's fermented corn in the products where you'll see ascorbic acid, and they put that as a preservative because it's an antioxidant. But if you're taking that in and ingesting it, you might not be aware that you're taking in something that is a fermented product, and that can actually help your histamine just really rear its ugly head. So I take camu powder for vitamin C. This has helped a ton. I've gone through a couple of bags of these. This is basically a food as supplement. Does that make sense? So this is actually a food. Anybody can eat this. It's not really a supplement, but I take it supplementally because I'm not getting in enough vitamin C from my food because of what I can't tolerate. Ginger, I go through a bag of this organic ginger. I just get this one at my local Walmart. You can get it at Trader Joe's. Lots of other stores carry organic ginger as well. It's a root vegetable, so I try to get it organic. I don't get everything organic, but that one I do because I grate it, I put it in a cup, and I steep it, and I'll have a tea out of ginger. It's a great anti-inflammatory for anyone, and that is one of the things that I make sure to have at least a couple of times a week. But this right here that I'm about to show you, I'm going to show you 3 different ways, well, 2 different ways that I take this. This is something that I cannot go without. This has helped me the most out of everything that I've taken. If I had to get rid of everything as far as histamine supplements, I would not get rid of this. Nettle. So I have a giant bag of this for a reason, because I kept buying these little tea bags, and this is, I want to say this is about 10 bucks or so. This is 20. So I just found something that I can use to steep that, and this builds up in your system, which most holistic things do. They don't work like symptom, it's not like a symptom thing where it's going to, lower your symptoms immediately, like something over the counter, because there's no stimulants in it and things like that. It's going to work on your whole system holistically over time. So it builds up in your system. Everyone may not be able to tolerate this, but this is a great way to lower inflammation in your body. I also carry this with me. So if we're going out of town, this is what I'm taking with me. And then on days where I'm really busy, I take one of these in the middle of the afternoon sometime, and I notice a huge difference. I remember my husband would say to me, "Did you have your nettle today?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because he'll speak to me first thing in the morning, and I've been sneezing all night or just having a lot of drainage and sinus issues. And he's like, "You had your nettle tea because you sound better. Your voice is clearer, and you don't sound like you have a frog in your throat. You're not sneezing as much." Even my family recognizes when I've had my nettle. So I have it in several different forms: tea form, pill form, and loose tea form. That to me has made the biggest difference, and it's also great for your gut health. So that's the thing with holistic products. They're typically food, right? An herb or something that that's edible, that it's going to work over time on your body. So you asked if I feel, because I know you want to get away from supplements. And I think that you can to a degree. You can to the degree that you can still get these in through the food that you're able to tolerate. So every time we cut out a food group, or every time we cut out something in our diet, we're also removing the nutrients that are coming from that diet, that are coming from that food item. So when we do that, if we're not replacing it, we can cause just imbalance in our body. It can cause deficiencies because our body is not getting that particular nutrient. So vitamin C, for example, that's a perfect example. I can't eat a lot of peppers, right? Because they just cause a lot of inflammation for me personally. And since I can't have a lot of peppers, that's one of the highest foods that have vitamin C in them. Red peppers are like number 2 after like acerola cherry. So that's number 1 with vitamin C. Number 2 is like red peppers. But I think because of the capsaicin, it causes just a histamine response for me personally. So since I can't take that, I'm gonna take the camu powder because I don't wanna be deficient in vitamin C, which I already am because I've had testing done. So that hopefully answers your question. If you can get the things that your body requires in the foods that you're able to tolerate, then you won't have to supplement forever. However, if you can't, there may be things that you may still, with a low histamine diet, still have to have in your supplements, or to fill in gaps, right? To fill in the gaps of the things that you're not able to tolerate with the foods that you have had to cut out. You know, you can get to a place where you can tolerate certain things, and then by all means, I think, you know, you can cut those supplements out. This is just my opinion. But if it's something that your body is low in and you can't get from food that you can tolerate, then I think that it's really, really important to supplement. Until next time, your life matters. What you do with it matters. So what will you steward well? Peace.